Hello everyone, thanks for joining me for this week's video where today I'm going to talk about some photography lessons. I'm going to share my biggest photography lessons that I've learned and come to realise in the last year that have really helped and shaped my outlook on photography moving forward. Now, it may seem like the wrong time of year to actually make this video. Maybe I should be waiting until the end of the year, but I think this month kind of marks the end of a very busy 12 months for me where I've done a lot of photography, both commercially, professionally, and in terms of a lot of personal projects and a lot of personal work. So now feels like the right time to kind of summarize that time frame. And I've got a lot of things to share that I think were definitely very beneficial for me, but I know will be very, very beneficial for you to hear, whether you're a beginner, an intermediate, or even if you're a professional photographer. I think there's going to be something in this video for everybody. So let's get into it. Now, this first realization, I guess you could call it, is all around how we kind of label ourselves as photographers and how that can help and hinder our photographic practice. I think for me, especially when I started to do photography commercially and professionally, I felt like I really needed to kind of niche down and specialize in order to, gain work and to gain clients. And that ended up just, I guess, seeping through into some of my personal work as well, where I just kind of felt like I needed to fit nice and neatly into a box, whether that was labeling myself as a commercial photographer because that's how I make an income, or labeling myself maybe as a landscape photographer because that's one of the things that I'm most passionate about photographing. And I think social media and the internet in general has maybe pushed photographers down this road of niching down and finding a very kind of strong voice for their work, because in terms of Instagram and X or Twitter, for example, if you have a very obvious niche in terms of what type of images you share, if you're a landscape photographer and you just share landscape images, then you might reach more people, you might get a bigger following, you might be able to get more traction on those types of platforms. And I think that's been the way that a lot of photographers who have come into photography during the last, 5 to 10 years perhaps, have kind of approached their photographic work is, what box do I fit in and how am I going to get the most eyes on my work? And for me, over the last year, I've taken conscious steps to remove those labels from my work as much as possible. Now I just kind of see myself as a photographer, and I found that incredibly liberating, and that creative freedom that has provided has given me more opportunities to be able to photograph the things that interest me, whether that is doing landscapes, but maybe also doing some street photography and maybe even doing some, documentary photography, some photojournalism, whatever it is that interests me, whatever things that I'm taking in terms of inspiration, just having the creative freedom to be able to explore that without feeling like it's hurting my reputation as a photographer or how people are going to perceive my work as a photographer. I think removing that anxiety and that stress potentially from the equation has led to me creating more work this year that I'm really happy with. And I definitely want to encourage everybody to think about that in terms of their own photography and, just think about what you want to photograph and don't worry too much about how you label your photography. You can just be a photographer, and that's absolutely fine. The next thing I want to talk about is kind of shooting conditions and how our perception of what we think are ideal conditions might actually be hurting our development and progress as photographers. This year I wanted to prioritize getting out with my camera as often as possible. That was really the kind of mission statement that I set out at the start of this last 12-month period. And there was a few motivations for that. Firstly, I was getting into more video work commercially, and if you've watched this channel for any length of time, you'll know that video making and working on videography and cinematography and all of that sort of stuff is very, very important to me, and it's something that I'm very passionate about. And in order to, develop those types of skills, I needed to use my camera more. And when you have a camera, you naturally want to do photography as well. So what I ended up doing was just going out as often as possible to just kind of practice making videos and taking a few photos. really the big motivator for this was me wanting to kind of set up my camera to be, I guess, able to shoot hybrid in a very easy way. It was things like setting up my custom buttons and sorting out my dials and figuring out the menus, just so I could be more agile and I could, I guess, create a better workflow. And the only way to really do that is to get out and shoot. But in order to do that, I guess, frequently enough to be able to learn quickly, it meant that I needed to go out during times of day or times of the week that were maybe kind of suboptimal in terms of the weather. It meant going out to shoot in the afternoon on sunny days and not necessarily just waiting for sunrise or sunset or golden hour to practice photography or videography. I did a video on the channel a few months ago about photography on harsh light days and how to really approach that. I'll link it down in the bio if you haven't seen it already. But when I was going out and using my camera during times of day that were maybe unfavorable photographically, I still was able to learn so much and get a lot from those experiences. Just being able to be outside, immersing yourself in your surroundings, you notice things like structure and like form and things like composition, where you can maybe just look at a scene and just think there's something here that could work really well, whether it's a landscape scene where there's some really nice form and texture and leading lines, and being able to kind of pre-visualize that, okay, this isn't great now, but maybe on another day when I do get that golden light or some better weather conditions, there's something here that could be really, really good to photograph. I mean, all that kind of stuff can be done at any time of day, and being able to practice that pre-visualization of not just kind of taking things at face value, but kind of working a scene in your mind, of just assessing it and thinking about the potential of any given scene, I just think is going to help your photography leaps and bounds. If you're only waiting for golden hour to go and shoot, and if you're kind of disregarding other times of day, then all you're doing is limiting the opportunities you have to go out with your camera. And yes, while certain genres of photography, such as landscape photography, for example, will definitely benefit from, nice, soft, golden light, there are also certain genres where shooting in the middle of the day is absolutely great. Things like street photography, where you've got high contrast and those kind of deep angular shadows, can be really interesting when thinking about scenes and compositions in that particular medium. It's all just about what you choose to shoot. And I guess that goes back to the previous point, doesn't it, of just having that photographic freedom, removing labels, and just following curiosity. I think that's just something that is going to be extremely advantageous for your photography, because it's just going to get you out and shooting a lot more. Another big realization for me this year is just the importance of long-term work. I think for me, like with a lot of photographers in the modern age, we all have a propensity to just share work as often and as quickly as possible. I know for myself, if I've been on a shoot and I've taken some photos and I've come back home and I've started to edit them, that I just naturally have an inclination, if I'm excited about a photo, to just want to share it straight away with other people, to get their opinions and to, I guess, get that gratification that what I've taken is in fact actually a half decent photo. And again, it's probably social media that has, I guess, created this behavior within a lot of creative or artistic people, because really we do want to share our work, and that is a big motivator for doing any artistic pursuit, is because you want to share that art with other people and other people within that community. It's something that I really enjoy. Something that I love about YouTube is the community that is built around a passion that we all share. But for me, I think that, I guess, content mill, for lack of a better term, of just going out, shooting, editing, sharing, I'm just kind of getting a little bit tired of that process, especially, on Instagram and stuff these days. It's like, I go out and I take a photo and I share it, and it's so momentary, and the next day it's completely lost in the sea of photos that get uploaded to that platform, and then it's never really seen or even thought about since. That feeling of longevity is completely lost on those types of social media platforms, and it was the big motivator for me to dedicate more time to my YouTube channel in the last year, because I feel like my channel and these videos enable me to share my work in a more meaningful way and with a bit more longevity. These videos are going to be live here on my channel indefinitely for people to stumble across, and I really like that. I like that it builds a bit of a portfolio and a bit of a story of my journey as a photographer, and I think it's just a format that works a lot better for me. And that meaningful nature of photography is just something that I've thought about a lot over the last 12 months. And I think when you try to create meaningful work, sometimes that meaning takes a bit of time to actually come to the surface, and you kind of have to sit with those photos for a while before you really start to fully understand what it is you want to do with them. And that's why I've been experimenting with more long-term photography projects this year than I have done in the past, because it's just a nicer way to shoot and to create work. I've learned so much about photography through exploring projects this year, whether that's just thinking about the planning stage of coming up with concepts and planning locations and things that you want to actually photograph, all the way through to kind of creatively thinking about how you can necessarily take potentially subjects that might seem ordinary to a lot of people, but attach a story, a narrative, or a deeper meaning to those potential subjects. It's that way to kind of, I guess, artistically look at the value of any given subject or scene and start to build a story around that particular subject or that thing that interests you. And I've got a few things that are kind of in the back of my mind and that I've got on the go at the moment that I haven't really shared anything about yet, but I just think that process of not feeling the need to share and just going out just to create this work and coming home and getting the photos, editing them slowly over time, and then just letting the photos sit on a hard drive until the right time to share them or the right time to collate them into a, fully formed project or, piece of work emerges. Just giving yourself that time to allow it to sit and wait until the right time, I think is just something that will be beneficial for everybody. I think long-term work, it definitely forces you to engage a lot more with your surroundings and to think in a bit more of a structured way about your intentions on what you're going to shoot and why you're shooting that particular subject. It's not necessarily something that I would say you have to do all the time. I'm not purely doing project work, but I think having a project in the back of your mind that you're just chipping away at over time, I think it's just something that is quite nice as a process. And at the end of that, you might have something really valuable and meaningful that you could make into a book or a zine or a gallery exhibition. There's a lot of benefits of doing those types of long-term projects. And the final thing that I've really focused on this year is experience over gear. Now, what I mean by that is we all have a tendency to want to invest in photography equipment, whether that's upgrading a camera, buying a new lens. And whilst I do wholeheartedly believe that investing in photographic equipment can help us and it can inspire us to shoot, and it can open up new ways to create photos, which can definitely be very motivational. It's like anything that gets you out with your camera, it's definitely a good thing. But for me this year, I have wanted to prioritize the experience of photography and investing more in that than in gear. I haven't bought a piece of camera equipment in over 12 months. I haven't bought a new camera, I haven't bought a new lens. I've just decided to stick with what I've got and take the money that I would spend on, investing in upgrades and use that to go on some trips, whether that's kind of booking a train ticket to a new city to go and shoot, or booking an Airbnb or a campsite in North Wales for a few days to go and explore some new locations. It's basically just investing in things that are going to give you photographic experiences and allow you to go out with your camera to actually make photos. There's no point in spending all of your money on camera equipment if you then don't have any disposable income left over to actually go out and, put fuel in your car to go and drive to locations to photograph, or by, going on trips. If you're kind of making your world smaller by investing in camera equipment, which, let's face it, is expensive, then I don't know if that actually enriches your experience as a photographer, because there's no point in having all the equipment but not really having an avenue or an ability to actually use it to its fullest potential. And I think it's just my personality. I really enjoy getting out and going to new places, or even just going and revisiting familiar places, time and time again, to really get to know them and to just kind of immerse myself in the landscape and in the outdoors. And really, I just want to be able to do that without necessarily worrying too much about the kind of like financials of that. I don't want it to be a case of, well, if I go on this trip, I then can't necessarily buy this piece of equipment. I don't want it to be like that trade-off of it has to be one or the other. So I just decided to remove the purchase of gear out of my kind of mindset for my photography this year, and instead just focus on investing in things that are going to actually just develop my skills and build my portfolio. It goes back to that thing that I mentioned earlier about the priority this year was just about getting out and using my camera as often as possible. And I think, focusing on that idea of building experience into that, I've been to some really great places this year that have yielded some really nice photos. And when I look back at my portfolio, I'm really happy that there's diversity there, and it's not just a lot of photos of the same kinds of places. That breadth in the work has definitely been beneficial for me. So it's just something that I wanted to share, because I think if you are thinking about investing in gear, maybe just give it a little bit more thought and just think, is there something better that I could be doing with that money to help my photography? Because whilst, like I said, it's great to invest in gear because it can be beneficial, I don't think we need the latest and greatest cameras all the time. We don't need to keep up, with the latest model. I shoot on a Sony a7 III. It's an old camera now, but it still creates good photos and I'm really familiar with it. So there's no real reason for me to upgrade that. I haven't felt that need in the last year. So it's just something that I think everybody should keep in mind, I suppose, when weighing up what we should be investing in terms of our photography. So just a few things there that I wanted to share with you. I hope you found some use and some benefit in kind of hearing my perspective and what I've been going through with my photography. I would love to hear in the comments below what you have sort of felt the most valuable in terms of the lessons you've learned this year in terms of your own photography practice. I think sharing this stuff with other people is definitely beneficial. Some perspective goes a long way in any artistic or creative pursuit. So if you did enjoy it, do give the video a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, if you watch this channel on a regular basis and you haven't yet subscribed, then also do consider hitting the subscribe button and ring the bell so you get notified when new videos go live, which is every Wednesday at around 5 o'clock UK time. So until next week, take care, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all very soon.